Yes, indeed. We are live, everyone. Welcome back to Knicks and 4 Live, FanDuel Edition, Episode 3. Joining me today, I have a good friend of mine, goes by the name of Nigel Maddock. Today, we're going to be chopping it up big time. I'm your host, Ayers, of Knicks and 4. We're going to be talking about expectations for the NBA season. What are some expectations for the New York Knicks? What are some expectations for the Miami Heat? We're going to be getting into the Damian Lillard situation. We're going to be talking about a lot of different topics, guys. Drew Holiday, a lot of different things. How is the NBA impacted by all of this? But before I spare you guys any details, let me give my buddy here, Nigel Maddock, a chance to introduce himself. Maddock, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us how long you've been a Miami Heat fan, how long you've been an NBA fan. What is your overall expectation for the Miami Heat?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. First and foremost, I've been a Heat fan since honestly Dwayne Wade was drafted. I was a big fan of college basketball growing up, and I remember Marquez run to the Final Four, and I just seen this player Dwayne Wade fucking killing like constantly, and I was just like, all right, wherever he goes, I'm gonna be a fan of that team.
You know, that's interesting because. You know, I never knew your origin for becoming a Miami Heat fan. So that's a revelation for me right now. You know, because, for those of you who don't know, myself, Nigel Maddock included, we're both from New York. So I was always curious as to why a New Yorker would possibly be a Miami Heat fan, considering the history and the rivalry that we have with each other. But that's a good reason, man. I mean, Dwayne Wade out of Marquette was something special. And lo and behold, has an awesome NBA career, ends up as a Hall of Famer, multiple champion. So I get that reason. But interesting show ahead of that we have today for you guys. First place I want to start, before we get into some of the more recent topics, the recent news concerning the Miami Heat, specifically surrounding Damian Lillard. I first feel like we have to start here, which was the recent last year semifinals between the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks. Now, I'm, for one, loved the Knicks' chances of winning this series. I looked at the regular season wins-losses record. I believe we were tied, if I'm not mistaken. And I just looked at how the Knicks finished off the Cavaliers. They were coming into the second round on a hot streak. And I looked at the Miami Heat and said that, okay, the best player on that team is Jimmy Butler. I'm sure you would agree. And they have literally nothing else that we need to worry about. I knew I wasn't that much a fool. I knew that they were well coached. I knew that they were well disciplined. I knew they were going to be a tough out. But I wasn't expecting, despite the fact that they swept the Milwaukee Bucks, right? I wasn't expecting the Knicks to have the same luck as Milwaukee did. And as we all know, the rest is history. The Miami Heat beat the Knicks 4-2, went on to a Game 7 against the Boston Celtics, and made it to the, fortunately made it to the NBA Finals, which no one, I believe, saw coming. So what were your thoughts on that series, man? Because, despite the trolling going back and forth with each other, at the beginning of the series, did you truly believe that the Miami Heat would have no trouble with the Knicks? Honestly.
Yes. So, like, when you look at the history of the Heat and Knicks, especially recent history, I feel like we always pretty much take care of the Knicks, and I feel like we had a coaching advantage. I feel like we had a leadership advantage. We had a culture advantage. Like what the Knicks are trying to become, we've already been for years. So I just felt like when it comes to playoff, we were ready for that stage. MSG has always been a place where opposing players rise to the occasion, and I felt like that was tailor made for someone like Jimmy Butler to like really step up and play like that villain role. So
And
yeah, man, I
the
was just
villain
super
role he
confident.
accepted. The villain role he accepted. And, remember he got injured. What was it? Game 2, I believe, or Game 3?
Right.
And I was expecting New York to capitalize on that happening. Clearly, they didn't. They ended up losing that game. But, one factor that I feel is the main contributing factor to why the Knicks didn't have success against the Miami Heat in that playoff series wasn't solely Jimmy Butler. Jimmy was Jimmy, but he wasn't the Jimmy that he was in the first round of the playoffs against Milwaukee. I feel like he carried this heat wave. Everybody was expecting Jimmy Butler to be that Jimmy that lit up the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round, and he slowly started dissipating as the Miami Heat advanced more and more, ended up in the NBA Finals. But I feel like the unsung heroes of that series were the other guys like Caleb Martin, guys like Strus. Those guys were killing the Knicks on hustle, on efficiency. As you mentioned, they were supremely well coached, used to being in a playoff atmosphere, but these are guys that were undrafted. So it's almost like no matter who the Miami Heat position on their team as a rotation player, as a starting lineup player, they always seem to make it work. And this was the Knicks' first time making it into the second round, this iteration of the Knicks team, of course. And, while I was impressed with a lot of guys, I was happy for the Knicks to make it that far. Clearly, they went up against a team that was more seasoned in playoffs than they were. And ultimately, they lost. But despite you believing that the Miami Heat would ultimately win, I know for a fact you had to be a little nervous about Jalen Brunson. You had to be, because no one on the Heat could stop him. Jalen Brunson was doing whatever he wanted. Hell, I believe he was doing whatever he wanted the entire NBA season. And he just ran out of gas. RJ Barrett didn't show up. Julius Randle mainly didn't show up. So I truly believe if someone other than Jalen Brunson could have put up half of a good as a performance, that they would have maybe taken the series 7 games. That last game, what was it, game 6? They were right in the mix of it. It went down to the wire. So I like the Knicks' chances. I think they will be a little bit better than they were last year. Meanwhile, I think the Miami Heat, and we're going to get into the Damian Lillard situation soon, I think the Miami Heat are going to be a little bit worse than they were last year. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the Heat are always going to have doubters as long as they don't have the caliber of superstar like Kevin Durant, or like a Devin Booker, or any of these guys that are looked at as
right,
the top marketable star or the top marketable superstar. So I think people are making the mistake of thinking, oh man, the Yellow's Max Strus and Gabe Vincent. Well, there will be another Max Strus and there'll be another Gabe Vincent. People still haven't learned that there's a culture in Miami, and we have a system of developing players, and we're just gonna have to do it again. I really like our young guys. We have a draft pick, Jaime Jaquez Jr., who a lot of people, even NBA vets, are looking at. I remember Paul George had him on his show. It was like, yo, you're actually one of the draft picks that I'm interested in. I like your game. And that's big coming from somebody like that. And Jaime didn't even play a regular season NBA game yet. So I really like his potential. He's like a forward that actually plays similar to Jimmy Butler.
Mm-hmm.
And I already see it from training camp. Jimmy has taken him under his wing.
Yeah,
I'm really excited to see. Yeah,
that is some valid points you make. They do draft very well. They do have a consistent culture in place, which has been proven year in, year on out. So I wouldn't, doubt that the Miami Heat have contingency plans for how to fill the voids in their roster, right? I'm sure they'll figure it out. And whatever product they intend on putting on the floor, they're going to put out a quality product no matter what. But I feel like that's a good segue into the next talking point I want to cover. And that's pretty much something that I feel like is not getting a lot of media attention. The Miami Heat lost out on, Damian Lillard. I'm sure everyone in Miami is truly upset on how that whole situation unfolded. It was pretty much a done deal, right? It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. At least most of us around the league thought that it was only a matter of time that Damian Lillard would end up becoming a member of the Miami Heat. And then, you wake up one morning or you take a look at your phone one afternoon and wow, Damian Lillard is not a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. So, what I want to talk about is Pat Riley specifically. Now, Pat Riley and the Miami Heat organization have been notorious for always some way, somehow figuring out a way to get their guy, right? We've seen with the, going back to their championship days recently with the LeBron James Miami Heat, Chris Bosh Miami Heat, even getting Jimmy Butler, right? They always find a way to get their guy. But is Pat Riley to blame in this, situation? Because maybe they hedged their bets too soon. Maybe they thought it was a short deal. In the league that we have now, once a guy says, okay, I'm going to this destination, then that ownership trades him to that destination. So I feel like maybe Pat Riley got caught up in the sauce of, today's NBA, of players just basically controlling wherever they land. And I feel like he truly missed out. I think this is something that, we always prop up Pat Riley as being this great, businessman, always can make the right deal happen. But I believe he deserves some critiques. What exactly happened? How did Miami drop the ball on this Damian Lillard situation?
Well, yeah, I think if you read the piece from Chris Haynes, who's actually very close to Damian Lillard, he's actually known as the most reputable person to report on anything involving Damian Lillard. So I think when you read that piece, you see that the Blazers had no intention of working with the Heat. They wouldn't pick up the call. They wouldn't say exactly what they wanted. They just had like a spite to say, hey, listen, because you said that team only, we're going to make sure not to send you to that team. So I don't know how you could blame Pat Riley when he couldn't even get on the phone with the Blazers. Like, what do you want him to do at that point?
Yeah, I mean that there seems to be some validity to that report, and I completely agree with that grounds. Even without Chris Haynes reporting, because it seemed like, and I'm gonna shed some light. I have some more evidence to back up your claim in that regard, but it seems like it was a coordinated effort, not just from within the Portland Trailblazers organization, but tell me if I'm wrong. It seemed like it was a coordinated effort from the entire NBA to make sure that this deal didn't happen. Why? Because I feel that the NBA is feeling like they're losing control over their own product. Meaning that, again, players are demanding where they want to go, and they usually get what they want. So I feel like this is the NBA, trying to covertly get that control back and say, hey, players, yeah, you can request where you want to go, but ultimately we make the decision on where you end up going. And as you mentioned in that report from Chris Haynes, there seems to be some truth to that report, because one other piece of evidence that, backs that claim is bringing up right now is a report about Drew Holiday. Now, Drew Holiday, as we know, ends up with the with the Boston Celtics, obviously. But one thing that I came across recently and that I've learned, according to this report, is that he was on the, trade table for the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat were putting together a package to try to acquire Drew Holiday. And we don't know what the details of that, package would have been. I'm assuming it was a pretty nice deal. But regardless of the deal, it seems that Portland was uninterested in doing any kind of business with Drew Holiday. And obviously he ends up with the Celtics. So, yeah, I mean, there may be some truth to, Portland just saying, nah, we're not doing any business with Miami Heat. And, I think this is going to be a turning point in the league, because now players have to be careful about, publicly saying where they want to be traded. They have to be more hush. Tampering happens everywhere. Players talk to each other all the time, right? So players just got to do a better job of keeping it as secret as possible. When you're making it, so public and high profile, it makes the organization look bad. And then they don't want to look, you're like, oh yeah, this player is controlling his own outcome. We don't know what we're doing. But I do believe Pat Riley deserves some blame. Again, when was the last time the Miami Heat have really truly been successful? Yeah, they have made it to a couple of NBA finals within a 5-year period, which is very, very impressive. But outside of them landing Jimmy Butler in terms of like free agency or trades, I can't think of any move that they've made outside of Jimmy Butler that is going to change, overnight their projections. And, what I want to ask you now is, what is the next move for the Miami Heat, right? So obviously you guys were looking to land Dame. Everybody thought you would land Dame. But what is the maneuver now? Because Strus is gone, right? You still have Caleb Martin, who I believe will get much better. But what is the move for Miami to make now? And it hurts because, most guys already signed their free agency deals. Most guys are already traded. So at this point right now, who is the next guy you guys are going after? What is the contingency plan if Nigel Matic is the general manager of the Miami Heat?
First and foremost, you use Kyle Lowry's expiring contract. I think Kyle Lowry's making around $30 million a year, and it's expiring. That's very valuable in today's NBA. So I would use his expiring contract and the 2 first-round picks that we have, and to look for a trade. We really need like a point guard right now.
Yeah, so ideally it would have been Drew Holiday, right? But that right. was the move to make. But who's on the table right now? We have to go back to the drawing board and see, who's still a free agent right now, who's attainable, who can you get in a trade. So who, that does sound, in terms of the Kyle Lowry and the pieces to move. NBA teams love those expiring contracts. We know that. But who specifically would you want Miami to target? Obviously they would be on the market for a top tier point guard. That's who they wanted to get in. But if you can't get a quality point guard, who else are you trying to recruit through free agency or trade for this team?
So I think the funniest pairing, and I think it would be crazy enough to work, considering the situation, it's actually James Harden. I think if you look at what's going on in Philly right now, James Harden has repeatedly says, I am not playing for Daryl Morey. He has a history of forcing his way out, and he's actually willing to go to places that Dame wasn't. Dame said yes to Miami only, but he wasn't willing to make it messy. James Harden has no problem making it messy. And I feel like if Miami Heat targets James Harden and gets in his ear, like, listen, if you make it messy enough and we could get you in here, I think we have a really good chance to, to do something special. And I think that would be an interesting pairing because James Harden is known for, maybe not being the best with his shape and his conditioning. And the Miami Heat are known for being the most strictest team in terms of conditioning and getting into shape.
Okay, now I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because I'm on the other side of the fence on that argument for the same reason you just brought up. I think because the Miami Heat are well renowned for being an organization that is completely strict on the dieting, right? The body fat to muscle ratio, right? You can't be Boogie Cousins or some of these flabby and sick guys and be a member of the Miami Heat team. It's not just the dieting for James Harden that I think would be a concern for the Miami Heat. It's his lifestyle. James Harden, Magic City, but he's in Miami. This guy is not even going to show up to games, man. James Harden in Miami. And then you're talking about, look, the Miami Heat are very successful at taking guys off the street and then just like conditioning them to whatever they want them to be. You're bringing in a guy like James Harden who knows he's a future Hall of Famer, who has this chip on his shoulder this ego, how are you going to convince him to all of a sudden change his ways? He's the type of player that's already set in his ways. Now, on paper, like if it were actually to happen in real time, I think that would be an interesting combination between Harden, Jimmy, and Bam, right? I think that's a nice lineup to have, and with the other pieces that they can fill in here and there. But it's for that same reason why I think Pat Riley would be disgusted at having a player like James Harden. But if he was to manage some way, somehow, and I don't believe he will, to change some of his habits, get in the right body weight, body condition, go to less strip clubs, save it like as an occasion, then I think you have something. James Harden going to the Clippers, I think that's where he's trying to force his way to, but how can they make that deal happen? I just don't see it happen. I see Miami being able to come to the table with the, appropriate packages. What would a package for James Harden look like to the Miami?
It would definitely be Kyle Lowry and two first round picks.
You think that's all that gets him?
Make the money match. Absolutely. If you look at James Harden's on an expiring contract.
What is Harden making? Like 40, almost 50 mil?
Yeah. Like 38 million, I think.
Oh, he's on that. Right. He wanted to last year. He wanted the new contract. Right. He's still on that old contract. Right.
So Lowry's in the same range, so that will make the money work. And then 2 first round picks just because he's on an expiring deal, and any team that trades for him, they know that he's going to want to re-up for a sizable offer. And just the situation of how toxic it is, I feel like that's lowering his trade value.
And despite Kyle Lowry being way past his prime, he may be the perfect player to put on the Philadelphia 76ers. Even though you can't expect Kyle Lowry to be Kyle Lowry of old, but he may be exactly what the Sixers need in a situation where they're going to lose Harden for nothing anyway, right? Because they don't have many choices on who they can bring in either. As time goes on, their positioning grows weaker. So they have to make a move fast. So that'll be interesting. I think I see that deal happening much more sooner than any potential deal with the Sixers and the Clippers moving Harden. So that'll be interesting. I think that would be something that could work. But let's talk hypothetical, right? So I think you and I can both agree that the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference this year, when it's all said and done, will be the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics. We can agree on that, right?
You leaving out the Pacers? No, I'm just playing.
We was talking off camera about the Indiana Pacers. I was talking about how, I was a little sad because we lost Obi, and Nigel Maddox was talking about Obi possibly becoming a star. What if that happens for the Indiana Pacers? The Pacers is they're my X Factor team in the Eastern Conference this season. I think they're going to have a similar trajectory to that of the Sacramento Kings. They're just going to be loaded with young talent. Who's the coach out in Indiana?
I completely forgot.
Yeah, I completely forgot too. Yeah. Whoever's their coach, I gotta look into that. But they have a very good young core: Tyrese Halliburton, Obi Toppin, alley hoops, back and forth all day. So in the East, I feel like the East is starting to become top heavy. When you're talking about who are the best teams in the Eastern Conference, right? You have the Bucks, you have the Celtics, you have the Heat, you have the Knicks, and what's the 5th team?
Cavs.
So, okay. So I made a video recently talking about what I believe the seedings will be for next year, right? I got Philly in 6 just because of this whole James Harden situation. I think Philly is going to implode this season, which will lead to Embiid requesting a trade, hopefully to the New York Knicks. That's what the future that I foresee happening. So, you agree. So your top 5 in the East is Milwaukee, Boston, Miami, New York, and Cleveland.
I might have to pay. I go
You
back and
got the
forth
Pacers
between
as a
like
top 5 seed?
I go back and forth between the Pacers and the Cavs. I'm not sure.
I
'Cause I feel like the
see, I see, I
Cavs.
see the Pacers making it in the last slot. I see them going into the play-in and making it as an 8 seed. But I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I've been more wrong about other stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen. I just don't see it happening, is what I believe. But
Yeah, I'm just looking at the upside of this team. Like you have to account for the growth and the young
oh
players.
yeah,
You have
absolutely.
to account for Tyrese. You have to account for
He may take
Halliburton.
another jump, right?
Another jump.
Yep.
So I'm saying if you look at the upside, like you said, they're the X factor. They may make the biggest jump out of any team in the
And
NBA. When you
man, I
look
forget
at
his name.
yeah,
Who was the I believe this last year was the second year, or who was the rookie that just got drafted by Indiana?
Mathurin.
Benedict Mathurin. Yes, he takes now. When the first year he was a rookie last year, right?
Yep.
Right. I truly believe the early part of last season he was on pace to become rookie of the year. Benedict Mathurin. I even wanted the Knicks to draft him. I was like big on Benedict Mathurin, right? He's a special player. I truly believe he may take another step. So sky's the limit for Indiana, to be honest. And
And they brought in Bruce Brown. People slept on that move too. Championship
right.
player.
Mm-hmm.
He was really the glue guy.
Yep.
So a guy like that helping those young players take that next step. I think the Pacers could make a huge jump.
Yeah, and like when you're thinking about the other Eastern Conference teams, right? The Chicago Bulls, all you got to say is Lonzo Ball, right? Like they're in peril. The Atlanta Hawks, they're trying to trade away Trae Young, so it's like a lot of teams are falling off now, and this may be an opportunity for some teams to rise. One of the other things I want to talk about before we go, I want to have some fun for a little bit, is your man Jimmy. Now, I honestly love it. Because Jimmy has turned media day, media week, whatever you want to call it, into this whole spectacle now, right? Where it's like, it gives me like WWE vibes, right? Where it's like, they're doing their promos and stuff like that. And, Jimmy coined this look, his emo look. And emo is a feeling that he should be, given the fact that he was expecting to have a new teammate in Damian Lillard, and he ends up not, that ends up not happening. So I want to give this look on a 0 to 10 scale on cool or uncool. How cool is this look here? Were you that impressed from Jimmy's emo look?
I'm gonna give it a 10 because this is not even showing the whole outfit he had with it. Like he had a whole ensemble. He was looking like the anime character.
Yeah, he was looking like Black Sabbath or some kind of trench coat mafia, kind of. Yeah, Jimmy is out there, man.
Like you said, I do think it was strategic because media day for the Heat, everything would like 90% of the questions would have been about Damian Lillard or something close to that. And he made it all about that. So I do think that was strategic.
Yeah, and Jimmy is a guy where it's like even though this is a worst case scenario for Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat, Jimmy will always find a way regardless, right? He will figure it out. He's not going to, sit in the corner and sulk up about this. He's having fun. Obviously, he wants to, make it known that he's, not too happy about what happened. I think he would be a supporter of our thoughts on the NBA having something to do with Damian Lillard not being a member of the Miami Heat, right? I think he would, be a campaign manager for that protest. But yeah, I mean, I got the Miami Heat as a 4 seed or 5 seed. I think between them and New York, that's going to be back and forth. But we'll see what happens. One other thing is because this is Jimmy's second year doing these antics, and one of the other looks going back to last year was his Predator look, with the long dreads, little West Indian style. This, we didn't know what to expect from Jimmy when he did this the first time, right? I was convinced that was his real hair at first, but then I started coming along and hearing the truth, and I'm like, okay, Jimmy's just having fun. Now, which look do you like better? Do you like the long hair Jimmy, or do you like emo Jimmy?
I take emo all day because I'm a big anime fan. He just reminded me of like some I don't know, like some One Piece character or something.
Word, right?
Yeah, I'll take emo Jimmy all day.
Yo, he had the hair pressed and everything. Let's go back to look at the hair. He got the piercings. He got the little bit of black mascara under the eyes and stuff like that. Yo, Jimmy's a character, man. Speaking about Jimmy, one thing before we go, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about Jimmy. Now, I once heard this analogy. I believe it was on First Take. No, not First Take. First Things First on FS1. I believe, I forget whether it was Chris Broussard, Nick Wright, or Wiles that made this analogy take. But they talked about how you rank superstars. No, actually, I believe it was Max Kellerman that came up with this analogy. I believe it's like a club superstar analogy. So you have the superstars that are in VIP. You got the the general floor superstars that are just in the main room, the main section, and then you got the superstars that are waiting online to get into the club, right? So obviously the VIP members of the club are guys like LeBron James, Kevin Durant, those guys, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now I believe Jokic is a new member of that VIP club, VIP section in that club. And then, of course, when you're talking about the normal superstars, guys like James Harden are in the lower level floor. Where exactly do you place Jimmy Butler? Because, again, there's 3 spots according to this analogy. You got the VIP section of the club, you got the general section of the club, and you got the guys on the line waiting to enter the club. Those would be those sort of fringe superstars, which is where I believe Jimmy Butler would be located. He's in that fringe superstar section on the line trying to get into club superstar. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think if you look at what he's done since he's been a member of the Heat, if you look at the analytics, if you look at his playoff performances, if you look at the respect he has from his peers, that all says VIP to me. He just doesn't have the cachet and maybe all the commercials that those VIP superstars usually have. But I think if you look at his resume since he's been a member of the Heat, even the last year on the Sixers, even that one year he dragged the Timberwolves to the playoffs. It's this is VIP stuff he's doing. This is he just, for whatever reason, he doesn't have maybe the luck, he doesn't have the marketability to really get that VIP treatment. But if you look at his resume for a while now, it does say he should be mentioned with the VIP players.
Yeah, I mean, and you bring up one of the key words that I think you mentioned there is cachet. He, for whatever reason, right, he doesn't have the cachet as some of these other guys that are, for whatever reason, more marketable than Jimmy is, right? But I do believe there is a thing when people say playoff Jimmy, right? You talked about the stats, you talked about his accolades, that's all factual, right? But the thing about Jimmy is about, at least the way I see it, my perspective is that it's always a more thing about what he's capable of as opposed to what he's actually doing on a night-to-night basis. Now, he's capable of being a superstar. He can put on the superstar suit anytime he wants. But I don't know whether it's him reserving some gears, his conditioning, knowing when to turn it on, when to not turn it on. But playoff Jimmy is a thing. The stats do prove it that Jimmy in the regular season is not the same as Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. Now, what defines a true superstar? It's the moments when it counts, right? not what you do in the regular season. You see guys like James Harden, right? James Harden is a regular season superstar, but his track record has proven that in the playoffs, he folds, right? He's not the same James Harden that he is in the regular season when it matters. So that should take away from him being a superstar. In this regard, it adds to the notion, if you want to support that, Jimmy Butler is a superstar. The only reason why I believe he is not looked upon as a superstar is solely because of his contributions or lack thereof in the regular season. Now, Jimmy may have a big time year. This emo Jimmy may be foreshadowing for something more to come. Now, he's heard all of it, I'm sure. Playoff Jimmy. Jimmy's not this in the regular season. He only turns it on in the playoffs. He's hearing all of that. Jimmy Butler is the type of player that will give himself a challenge like, all right, you guys think I'm playoff Jimmy? Watch playoff Jimmy game 1 of the regular season. He may decide out of nowhere to just like, okay, let me show you what I'm capable of every single night. Especially if you may not be able to bring in another top tier superstar like a James Harden or whoever you may be targeting now. He may not have a choice but to be playoff Jimmy for the regular season. So do you think there's some truth to that? Do you think let me ask you this. Why do you think he decides to kind of be on cruise control in the regular season? Any specific reason, any sort of intel you have on that?
I actually kind of disagree with the narrative that he's on cruise control in the regular season. I mean, if you look at his numbers, especially the especially the advanced analytics, it tells you that he's a bona fide superstar in the regular season. If you look at his true shooting percentages, if you look at his assists, if you look at his PER, if you look at his defensive analytics, they all say he's a very, very top end player. The narrative for whatever reason is just that he's on cruise control in the regular season. But I think if you look deeper into his numbers in the regular season, it actually does say he's a superstar. It's just when the playoffs come around, he turns into Michael Jordan's son. It's just a different level. Just because he goes up a level doesn't mean what he does in regular season is something to sneeze at.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's anything that anyone is sneezing at, but in a league that is so predicated on your offense, right? What you score on a given night. Jimmy doesn't average nearly close to some of the top scorers in the league. And when you're talking about offensive production, right? He doesn't necessarily have to score because that's not how the Miami Heat are designed. They are a literal army, right? Everybody contributes a role for whatever situation needs to be fulfilled. So their team system is not necessarily predicated on a guy lighting it up every single night. So while Jimmy is fully capable of scoring, like we see in the playoffs, when he's needed to score in those situations, but in the regular season, that's not their goal. And Jimmy's a team guy. But their strategy may change. You mentioned things like PER. All of those statistics are things that are very important, but are, significantly overlooked, right? Because again, when people define superstars, they're looking at the sexy highlights. Oh, did he drop 40? Did he drop 50? How many three-pointers he shot, right? That's pretty much the narrative of who gets the most exposure, right? And Jimmy's just not that type of guy. He can score like that, but it's not in his MO to do that. It's not in the team's MO. But we'll see what happens, man. I think, you can never count out the Miami Heat. I think it's a big mistake for any team to make if you're going to go ahead and count the Miami Heat out. But I do think that, again, they're not going to be as good as they were last season, mainly because I feel like they didn't make enough moves to make themselves better. 2, because I think more teams will see them coming. But anything is possible. I've been surprised by this team before. So what are your final thoughts on the season? What do you think is going to play out this year? Do you think the Miami Heat will continue to be on pace to make it to the NBA Finals, or do you think they will fall short of those expectations?
Well, as a Heat fan, it's always finals or bust
Of
for me.
course.
That's just what I'm. That's just what I'm used to. So regardless of what the media says, or regardless of what other fans may say, my expectation is always to make the finals. And I do think they will be better than they were last year because they were an A seed last year. So I do think
True.
they will.
True.
I do. I do think they will be a lot better than that. Health permitting. Sometimes we just have bad luck with injuries or whatever the case may be. So I do think if we are healthy, we will be significantly better than we were last season.
Mhm.
And I'm also looking for some breakout years from guys like I said,
Caleb Martin.
Caleb Martin, Jaime Jaquez, and my biggest sleeper on the Heat is Nikolai Jovic. Nobody really knows
No,
who this kid is yet.
you've been putting me on to that dude. Yeah, I think he's gonna surprise a lot of people. You know, he's being kept under wraps right now, and I think he will. I think he will have a similar opening, similar to like something like Tyler Hero, where it's like, who's this dude, right? I'm not saying that they have the same game. No, I'm not saying that at all. But in terms of like, you know, the X factor, I believe he will win the Miami Heat some games this season out of nowhere. And, you know, by the time they make the playoffs, they will definitely be a playoff team this season, obviously. They're going to be a tough out for any team because they study you, they play hard, they beat the Knicks at their own game, right? You know, the Knicks under Tom Thibodeau, known as this defensive team that really grinds you out and out hustles you. The Knicks, you know, embarrassed the Cleveland Cavaliers in that first round series because they out hustled them, out rebound them, out toughed them. And then they make it to the second round and Miami Heat gave them a taste of their own medicine. They said like, okay, you guys are like level 3 toughness. We're like level 6, level 7 toughness. So, you know, again, count Miami out of the playoffs, out of any contention, you're going to lose that bet. So, but again, I got the Knicks and the Heat finishing 4th or 5th in the Eastern Conference. But that's going to be all for the stream today, guys. Appreciate the views. Everyone check out, give a chance to, you know, hear our thoughts on what we feel the Knicks expectations and Miami Heat expectations will be for this NBA season. Let me know your thoughts on this whole Damian Lillard situation. Do you think Miami Heat will be able to rebound after this? Do you think that the Miami Heat do stand a chance to make it back to the NBA Finals like they did previously against the Denver Nuggets? And overall, if you like the content, like the channel, subscribe, share. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. Nigel Maddock, you want to hit us with some jewels before we exit?
Yeah, man, just know that the Heat are going to make it to the finals again.
Wishful thinking, you know. But one thing's for sure, I'm smart enough to know never to bet against this guy. This guy is constantly trying to wiggle me into these crazy bets. You know, he was trying to trap me last season when the Knicks and the Heat were in the playoffs. I'm like, nah, man. I got faith in my team. I ain't got that much faith in my team.
Yeah, man. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. But, you know, that's going to be all for the show, guys. Like I mentioned before, a couple episodes ago, get used to seeing these faces. Going to try to have guys like Nigel Maddock, guys like Gospel, reoccurring guests on the show as we, you know, head into the NBA season. More topics to come. And you know where to hit us. Knicks and 4 Live, guys. Catch you guys on the rebound. Peace.